The plasma bolt seared past Commander Cale Vorton's shoulder, leaving a smoking crater in the bulkhead behind him. He rolled behind a twisted beam of his dying ship, the Hellfire's edge, and checked his ammunition counter. 3 shots left, against an entire hegemony boarding party. Well, he muttered, wiping blood from a cut above his eye, this is certainly how I pictured dying. Alone, broke, and spectacularly outgunned. The hull breach sirens wailed their death song as atmosphere vented into the void. Through the chaos, a figure materialized from the smoke-knot hegemony, but something far more dangerous. A woman with silver hair that seemed to catch light that wasn't there, wearing armor that shifted like liquid mercury. Her eyes were the deep crimson of dying stars. "Cale Vorton," she said, her voice cutting through the din with supernatural clarity. "I am Nyxera Veilthane of the Umbral Covenant. You have something I need." He laughed bitterly, gesturing at the devastation around them. "Lady, unless you need spectacular failure and crushing debt, I'm fresh out of everything else." She moved with fluid grace, completely ignoring the plasma fire erupting around them. A hegemony soldier appeared at the breach, weapon raised, and simply, ceased. Not dead, not destroyed, gone, as if reality had edited him out of existence. "You commanded the 47th Terran Expeditionary Force during the Battle of Kythera Prime," she continued, stepping delicately over debris. "You held the line against impossible odds for 72 hours. The hegemony still speaks your name in their war councils. Ancient history. That man died with his crew, did he?" Nyxera tilted her head, studying him like a predator, examining prey. "Because I'm looking at him right now, hiding behind wreckage, down to his last 3 shots, and still calculating angles of attack instead of surrender. The Cale Vorton I've researched doesn't know how to quit." Another hegemony soldier rounded the corner. This one lasted long enough to scream before the shadows consumed him. Cale's tactical mind, dormant 4 years of running cargo and dodging creditors, suddenly sparked to life. "What do you want?" "The hegemony has something that belongs to my people. Something they stole from a dead world on the Outer Rim. I need someone with your particular skills to help me retrieve it. And in exchange," Nyxera gestured, and the attacking hegemony forces simply ... stopped. Not dead, not stunned, frozen in time itself. "I make your problems disappear. All of them. Your debts, your bounties, your criminal record. Clean slate." He stared at the impossibility before him. Time manipulation was theoretical at best, yet here she stood, casually violating the laws of physics. "What aren't you telling me?" Her smile was sharp as a blade. "Everything, Cale Vorton. But that's what makes it interesting." The frozen hegemony. Soldiers began to move again, confusion clear on their faces as they found their targets vanished. Through the breach, Cale glimpsed a ship that shouldn't exist, something that seemed to be carved from crystallized darkness itself. "Tick-tock, Commander," Nyxera said, extending her hand. "Die here as a failed smuggler, or take the gamble that might make you legendary again." Cale looked at her outstretched hand, then at his ruined ship, then at the 3 shots left in his weapon. The old soldier in him, the one who'd held impossible lines and won unwinnable battles, stirred to life. He holstered his gun and took her hand. The universe Cale's first breath, aboard Nyxera's ship, the void whisper, tasted of ozone and something indefinably ancient. The interior defied easy description corridors that seemed to bend space itself, walls that showed glimpses of distant nebulae, and a persistent sense that the ship was alive in ways that made his skin crawl. "Your vessel," he said carefully, running his hand along a surface that felt like polished obsidian, but hummed with energy, "isn't exactly standard issue." Nyxera moved ahead of him, her mercury armor flowing like liquid as she walked. "The Covenant doesn't build ships, Commander. We grow them." "Grow them from what?" "Questions that might get you killed." She paused at an intersection where 3 corridors met at impossible angles. But since you're already committed to this particular suicide mission, I'll indulge your curiosity. Crystallized dark matter, quantum foam, and the dreams of sleeping gods. Kale stopped walking. You're not entirely human, are you? Her laugh was like silver bells in a tomb. Human? Oh, my dear commander, I'm something far more dangerous. I'm what humans become when they refuse to accept limitations. They entered what might generously be called a briefing room. A holographic display materialized, showing star charts that hurt to look at directly. Systems within systems, dimensions folded like origami, and at the center of it all, a pulsing red beacon. The hegemony calls it Installation Mortis, Nixera explained, her crimson eyes reflecting the display's glow. A research facility built inside a dead star, where they conduct experiments that would make their own war crimes tribunals weep. And what did they steal from you? The display shifted, showing an object that seemed to exist in too many dimensions simultaneously. Kale's eyes watered, trying to focus on it. The heart of Umbros, the last remnant of my homeworld before it was consumed. It contains the collective consciousness of my entire species. Her voice grew cold. The hegemony is using it to power a weapon that could unravel reality itself. Kale studied the installation's defenses. Impossible didn't begin to cover it. This is a fortress inside a stellar remnant, protected by gravitational shears that would tear apart anything larger than a molecule. The radiation alone would cook any known whole material. And you want to break in, how, exactly? With the one thing the hegemony fears, more than any weapon or fleet. She turned to face him, and for a moment, her human facade slipped. Behind those crimson eyes lurked something vast and alien, and utterly without mercy. A human who refuses to die. Flattering, but I'm not exactly superhuman, aren't you? The display changed, showing footage from Cathara Prime. Kale watched himself, younger and full of fire, leading charges that should have been massacres, holding positions that should have been overrun, inspiring men to fight beyond their breaking point. You held that world for 3 days against a force that outnumbered you 50-1. Your own command described your tactics as tactically impossible, yet undeniably effective. He remembered those days, the weight of command, the impossible decisions, the way reality seemed to bend around his will when everything was on the line. He'd attributed it to luck, desperation, and good soldiers. What I'm offering, Nixera continued, is a chance to be that man again, to matter again. The hegemony took everything from your command, your crew, your purpose. Help me, and I'll give you something infinitely more valuable, which is revenge. The word hung in the air like a promise and a threat. Kale stared at the impossible fortress, calculating odds that weren't just bad, but actively hostile to the concept of success. There's something else you're not telling me, he said finally. Something about why it has to be me specifically. Nixara's smile was sharp enough to cut starlight. Very good, Commander. Yes, there is one more thing. The heart of Umbros doesn't just contain consciousness. It contains foresight. And every vision it's shown, every possible future where it's retrieved. She paused, letting the implications sink in. They all feature a human commander named Kale Vorton. So this isn't a recruitment, it's destiny. Destiny is just another word for inevitability. The question is whether you'll embrace it, or let it destroy you. Kale looked at the star charts, at the impossible fortress, at the woman who might not be human at all. Every rational part of his mind screamed that this was madness. But the soldier in him, the part that had never learned to surrender, was already planning the assault. The approach to Installation Mortis required more than courage. It demanded a fundamental rejection of physics itself. The void whisper dove through the chromosphere of the dead star, its crystalline hull somehow deflecting radiation that should have vaporized him instantly. Kale watched the sensors with the detached fascination of a man who'd accepted his own death. Stealth approach isn't exactly an option here, he observed. noting the massive energy signatures blooming across their screens. They'll detect us the moment we breach the stellar envelope. Nyxara's fingers danced over controls that seemed to respond to thought rather than touch. Detection was never the issue, Commander. The issue is making them believe we're something else entirely. The ship shuddered as they passed through a layer of compressed plasma. Outside the viewports, the universe had become a hellscape of fire and twisted space-time. In the distance, Installation Mortis hung like a metallic tumor in the star's core, its massive structure somehow maintaining integrity in conditions that defied comprehension. How are they even keeping that thing together? Kale muttered. The same way they're keeping us from being cooked alive, Nyxara replied. Stolen technology. The hegemony didn't build that fortress, they found it. Just like they found the heart of Umbros. Proximity alarms began screaming as defensive platforms emerged from the stellar matter, like predators from deep water. Weapons that fired coherent gravity, shields that bent light itself, and something that Kale's instruments couldn't even classify but registered as hostile to the concept of existence. Now would be an excellent time for your plan, he said, watching their doom approach with the inevitability of a tide. Nyxara closed her eyes, and the void whisper began to change. Not just its configuration, its very nature. The walls became transparent, then translucent, then something that existed in the spaces between thoughts. They were still there, still breathing, still real, but somehow also not. Phase shifting, she explained, her voice sounding distant. We exist in the gaps between possibilities now. To their sensors, we're just another quantum fluctuation in the stellar matrix. They drifted through the defensive perimeter like ghosts, invisible to instruments designed to detect matter, energy, and life. The installation grew larger, revealing its true horror structure that seemed to have been carved from the bones of reality itself, covered in symbols that hurt to perceive directly. Precursor technology, Kale realized. This is a precursor facility. Very good. Yes, the hegemony discovered this place during their expansion into the Outer Rim, a research station left behind by a species that transcended physical existence. Eons ago, they've been reverse engineering the technology ever since, and now they're using your people's consciousness to power it, to power something far worse than you can imagine. Nyxara's face was pale with strain from maintaining their phase state. The precursors didn't transcend, they were consumed, and the thing that consumed them is sleeping in the heart of that station. The docking bay appeared ahead, a vast maw that seemed to lead into infinite darkness. As they approached, Kale could see hegemony ships berthed along the walls, sleek destroyers and research vessels, all dwarfed by the alien architecture surrounding them. Once we dock, I won't be able to maintain the phase shift, Nyxara warned. We'll be solid, detectable, and very much killable. How long do we have? However long it takes you to be impossible again. They materialized inside the docking bay with a whisper of displaced air. Immediately, alarms began wailing. Emergency lighting bathed everything in hellish red, and Kale could hear the metallic footsteps of security forces converging on their position. He checked his weapons, a particle rifle, liberated from Nyxara's armory, and enough ammunition to level a city block. The familiar weight of combat gear felt like coming home after a long exile. The heart is being held in the central core, Nyxara said, her armor shifting into combat configuration. 17 levels down, through security that was designed by paranoid gods. And our exit strategy: win or die trying. Sometimes, that's the only strategy that matters. The first wave of hegemony security forces came around the corner in perfect formation, energy weapons charged and ready. They were professionals, well-trained and well-equipped. Under normal circumstances, they would have been more than sufficient to handle 2 intruders. But Kale Vortin had never operated under normal circumstances. He moved like he had on Cathara Prime, not just as a soldier, but as something more primal. Every angle calculated, every shot placed within human precision, every tactical decision made with the absolute certainty of someone who had learned to make the impossible routine. The security forces fell like wheat before a scythe. "Stay close," he told Nyxara, advancing through the chaos he'd created. "And whatever happens next, don't slow down to admire my work." Behind them, the Void Whisper began to sing a sound like crystal breaking in harmony, beautiful and terrible. Through the viewport, Kale could see the ship's hull starting to glow with internal fire. "Is she supposed to do that?" he asked. "She's preparing to die for us," Nyxara replied. "The least we can do is make it count." They ran deeper into the fortress, chasing destiny through corridors that reeked of stolen dreams. The corridors of Installation Mortis were wrong in ways that went beyond mere alien architecture. The walls seemed to pulse with a heartbeat that belonged to something vast and malevolent, and the air itself tasted of copper and forgotten screams. Kale's tactical instincts, honed through years of warfare, kept triggering warnings about threats that his rational mind couldn't identify. "The precursors built this place as a prison," Nyxara explained as they descended through levels that defied geometric logic. "They thought they could contain something that existed before the universe learned the rules of physics. Let me guess they were wrong, catastrophically so. The entity they tried to imprison instead consumed them, absorbed their knowledge, their power, their very existence. The hegemony found this place and thought they'd discovered a treasure trove of advanced technology. They had no idea they were feeding a god." They reached a checkpoint, where hegemony soldiers had established a defensive position. Kale studied the setup: overlapping fields of fire, energy barriers, automated turrets, a textbook defensive formation. That would have stopped any conventional assault cold. 18 hostiles, he murmured, his combat instincts painting tactical overlays across his vision. 3 heavy weapons platforms, 2 escape routes they think I can't see, and ... He paused, something nagging at his subconscious. "They're too confident. This is a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Nyxara replied. "The question is whether you're walking into it or through it." Kale smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in years. "I always did prefer the direct approach. What happened next wasn't a battle so much as a demonstration." Kale moved through the checkpoint like a force of nature, his particle rifle singing death while he danced between return fire, with inhuman grace. Every shot was perfect, every movement calculated to achieve maximum devastation with minimum exposure. The defenders fell in precise sequence, their carefully planned positions becoming death traps as Kale turned their own tactics against them. When the smoke cleared, 18 hegemony soldiers lay dead, and Kale hadn't taken so much as a scratch. "Magnificent," Nyxara breathed. "You fight like destiny made manifest." "I fight like a man with nothing left to lose," he corrected. But something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of his own words. They continued deeper, past laboratories, where horrific experiments continued in automated cycles. Kale glimpsed things in stasis tanks that might once have been sentient, twisted, transformed, but still aware enough to track their passage with eyes full of silent pleading. "The hegemony's research subjects," Nyxara explained. "They're trying to create soldiers that can channel the entity's power without being consumed by it." "Any success?" "Define success." "They've created beings that can manipulate reality itself. Unfortunately, those beings no longer possess anything resembling free will. They're puppets dancing to the will of something that should never have been awakened." As if summoned by her words, something emerged from the shadows ahead. It might have been human once. The basic shape was there, but now it existed in too many dimensions simultaneously. Its form shifted and flowed like liquid nightmare. And when it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Interlopers," it said, the word echoing with harmonics that made Kale's teeth ache. "You carry the scent of the void. You seek the heart. Among other things, Kale replied, raising his weapon. Stand aside, or be moved aside. Your choice. The entity laughed, a sound like reality tearing. I am beyond your weapons, little soldier. I am become death. Destroyer of Kale shot it in the face. The particle beam tore through the creature's shifting form, causing it to scream in frequencies that shouldn't exist. It didn't die. Things like this probably couldn't die in any conventional sense, but it definitely hurt. Impossible, it gasped, its form stabilizing into something merely horrifying instead of incomprehensible. You're just human, just mortal, just someone who's really tired of being told something's impossible. Kale interrupted, advancing while maintaining steady fire. I held Kithara Prime against odds that made gods weep. You think being really ugly is going to slow me down? The creature retreated, its confidence shattered by the reality of Kale's absolute refusal to be impressed. Behind them, more alarms were sounding as reinforcements converged on their position. The central core is just ahead, Nyxera said, gesturing toward massive doors that seemed to be carved from crystallized space itself. But Kale, what? The entity I mentioned, the one that consumed the precursors. It's not sleeping anymore. The moment we touch the heart of Umbros, it's going to notice us. And when that happens, I'll deal with it the same way I've dealt with everything else today. He checked his ammunition counter, still plenty left, by refusing to lose. The doors began to open, revealing a chamber that existed in dimensions human minds weren't designed to process. At its center, suspended in a matrix of pure energy, pulsed something that looked like a crystallized tear of the universe itself, the heart of Umbros, and surrounding it, watching them with interest that felt like the weight of eternity, was something that had been old when the first stars were born. Welcome, it said in a voice like the death of galaxies, to my domain. The entity that had consumed the precursors defied description in any language humans had ever conceived. It existed as concept as much as substance, a writhing mass of dark intention that seemed to occupy every point in space simultaneously while being definitively nowhere at all. Its voice resonated not just in the air, but in the quantum foam itself, making reality shiver with each word. I know you, it said, focusing its impossible attention on Kale. The one who makes the unlikely inevitable. The one who forces possibility to bow to will. I have been watching your species with great interest. Kale kept his weapon trained on the thing, even though every instinct screamed that conventional arms would be useless. Then you know I'm not here for a philosophical discussion. Oh, but you are, the entity replied, amusement rippling through dimensions. You see, Kale Vorden, you represent something I have not encountered in eons of existence. Pure, undiluted, human stubbornness. The absolute refusal to accept that some things cannot be achieved through force of will alone. The heart of Umbros pulsed brighter, and Kale could hear something within it. Voices. Countless voices, singing in harmonies that spoke of loss and hope and desperate defiance. Nyxera's people, trapped but not broken. The hegemony believes they can harness my power through that crystallized consciousness. The entity continued. They are partially correct. The heart does amplify certain abilities, but what they don't understand is that I have been, influencing their research. Every experiment, every advancement, every breakthrough has been guided by my will. Toward what end? Nyxera demanded, her form beginning to shift as she drew upon powers Kale was only beginning to understand. The creation of a perfect vessel. You see, my dear Umbral, I have grown tired of this prison, tired of being trapped in dimensions that barely contain my essence. I require a form that can exist in your reality while channeling my true nature, a form with the tactical brilliance to conquer galaxies and the sheer bloody-minded determination to see it through. The implications hit Kale like a physical blow. You want to possess me. Want. Such a crude word. I offer partnership, your mind, enhanced by my knowledge. Your determination, amplified by my power. Together, we could remake this universe into something worthy of our combined will. Counteroffer, Kale replied, switching his weapon to maximum yield. Go to hell. He opened fire, pouring everything his particle rifle could deliver into the entity's core. The beams struck something solid and exploded into brilliant cascades of energy that illuminated the chamber in stark, hellish light. The entity laughed. Magnificent. Even now, faced with a god, you choose defiance over submission. This is exactly why you're perfect for my purposes. Tentacles of pure dark energy lashed out, moving faster than thought. Kale dove aside, his enhanced reflexes barely keeping him ahead of certain death. One tentacle grazed his shoulder, and he felt reality try to edit him out of existence. Only his absolute refusal to cease being kept him coherent. Nixara, he shouted. Whatever you're planning now would be good. She was already moving, her form becoming something that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Her hands wove patterns in the air that hurt to look at, and the very structure of the chamber began to respond. I'm not just Umbril, she said, her voice echoing with harmonics that matched the entity's own. I'm the last Umbril. When my world died, when my people were consumed, I absorbed what remained of our collective power. I am the ghost of an entire civilization. Impossible, the entity snarled, its attention switching to her. I would have sensed, you sensed what I wanted you to sense. She interrupted, her form now blazing with power that made the heart of Umbros look dim by comparison. Did you really think the Umbro Covenant would send just anyone to retrieve our most sacred artifact? The entity's rage was a physical force that shattered surfaces and bent space-time, but its attention was focused entirely on Nixara now, which was exactly what Kale had been waiting for. He sprinted toward the heart of Umbros, dodging energy discharges that left holes in reality itself. The crystallized consciousness pulsed, brighter as he approached, and he could feel it reaching out to him, recognizing something in his nature that resonated with its trapped inhabitants. You cannot touch it, the entity roared. I have bound it with chains of pure possibility. No mortal can. Kale grabbed the heart. The universe exploded. Power beyond description flooded through him, not just the consciousness of the Umbro people, but their collective memory, their knowledge, their desperate hope for freedom. He saw their world as it had been, beautiful and terrible, and utterly alien. He felt their love for existence itself, their rage at being trapped, their faith that someday, somehow, someone would come for them. And underneath it all, he felt his own nature amplified and reflected back at him, the part of him that had held impossible lines and won unwinnable battles, magnified by the will of an entire species. Now, he said, his voice echoing with the power of gods and the stubborn determination of humanity. Let's discuss your surrender terms. The entity that had consumed the precursors took a step backward. For the first time in eons, it felt something it had almost forgotten. Reality bent around Kale like clay in the hands of an artist who had finally found the perfect medium. The heart of Umbros didn't just contain the consciousness of Nixara's people, it contained their collective will, their refusal to surrender, even in the face of complete annihilation. Combined with his own nature, it created something the universe had never seen before. A human being with the absolute certainty of gods, and the tactical flexibility to make that certainty reality. The entity that had consumed the precursors was no longer laughing. This is impossible, it said, its voice losing the casual confidence that had marked its earlier words. You are mortal, finite, bound by the laws of physics and causality. You cannot let me stop you right there, Kale interrupted, his form now blazing with power that made the chamber's alien architecture look fragile by comparison. I've been hearing that word a lot today. Impossible. You know what I've learned. Impossible is just another word for hasn't been done by the right person yet, he gestured. And the energy matrix holding the heart of Umbros simply ceased to exist. The crystallized consciousness floated free, its light now harmonizing with the power flowing through Kale's enhanced form. Nixara, he said, never taking his attention off the entity. How long do we have before this place comes apart? The station's power core is directly linked to that thing's life force. She replied, her own form stabilizing as the entity's attention divided between them. If we can destroy it, the entire installation will collapse. But Kale, the psychic feedback could kill us both. Could, he repeated, smiling. I'm getting really tired of that word too. The entity launched itself at them with the fury of something that had never been truly challenged. Tentacles of pure malevolence lashed out, each one carrying enough destructive force to level continents. Reality warped and twisted as the creature unleashed power that had been accumulating for eons. Kale met its charge. Head on. What followed wasn't a battle in any conventional sense. It was a contest of wills played out on a cosmic scale, two incompatible versions of reality, trying to assert dominance over the same space. The entity fought with the accumulated knowledge of civilizations it had consumed, wielding power that had shaped galaxies. Kale fought with something far more dangerous, the absolute refusal to lose. Every attack the entity launched, Kale simply decided wouldn't work. Every reality-warping assault met the immovable object of human stubbornness amplified to cosmic proportions. The creature that had consumed gods found itself stymied by the simple, impossible fact that Kale Vortin had decided victory was the only acceptable outcome. You cannot defeat me. The entity roared, its form beginning to show cracks as its certainty wavered. I am eternal. I am inevitable. I am about to learn what happens when inevitable meets impossible. Kale finished. He reached out with power. He was still learning to control and grabbed the entity's essence directly. Not its form, not its manifestation, but the core concept of what it was. And then, with the casual authority of someone who had spent his entire life making the unlikely routine, he began to edit it out of existence. The creature's scream shattered dimensions. Its form, which had seemed so solid and terrifyingly real, began to unravel like a tapestry with its threads pulled. The accumulated consciousness of the precursors, trapped for eons, suddenly found themselves free to move on to whatever came after existence. Impossible, the entity whispered as it faded. You're just human. Yeah, Kale agreed. Just human. That's what makes us dangerous. The entity's destruction triggered a cascade failure throughout installation, Mortis. The Dead Star's core, held stable by alien technology, began to collapse. Gravity waves rippled outward as the station's impossible architecture folded in on itself. Time to go, Nixora said, grabbing Kale's arm. The Void Whisper is gone, he pointed out. How exactly do we? We don't run, she interrupted, her smile sharp with triumph. We ride the wave. She gestured, and the space around them began to fold. Not teleportation, but something far more elegant. They were convincing the universe that they were already somewhere else, and reality was obligingly editing itself to make that true. They materialized on the bridge of a ship Kale didn't recognize, surrounded by beings that looked vaguely humanoid but carried themselves with the same otherworldly grace as the Umbral fleet, she explained. What's left of it, anyway? We've been hiding in the spaces between dimensions, waiting for the heart to be freed. Through the viewports, Kale watched Installation Mortis collapse into the Dead Star's core, taking with it the hegemony's most advanced research and their stolen alien technology. The psychic scream of the entity's death echoed across subspace, and he could feel something vast and malevolent finally, truly dying. So, he said, settling into a chair that adjusted itself to his form, where does this leave us? Nixera studied him with those crimson eyes that seemed to see through time itself. That depends. The heart of Umbros chose you as its guardian. My people's consciousness lives within you now, along with all our knowledge and power. You could rule galaxies, if you wanted. Not really my style, Kale replied. I'm more of a hold-the-line kind of guy. Good, because the hegemony isn't going to take this lying down. When they realize what happened here, they're going to come for us with everything they have. They'll paint us as terrorists, criminals, threats to galactic stability, are we? Her smile was sharp enough to cut light. Absolutely. The question is whether you're ready to be impossible on a galactic scale. Kale looked out at the stars, feeling the power of an entire civilization humming in his veins, the tactical knowledge of gods at his fingertips, and the absolute certainty that came from never having learned to surrender. You know what? He said. I think I'm ready to find out just how impossible one human can be. Behind them, the dead star finally collapsed completely, taking the last remnant of an ancient evil with it. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the hegemony's instruments registered an energy signature they couldn't identify, moving with purpose toward their core worlds. The universe had just learned to fear the words, just human, and Kale. Vortin was ready to remind everyone exactly why that was the most dangerous phrase in existence. The gamble was over. The real game was just beginning.